What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is the LazyDaze Channel, and we're back at it again with some more history reaction for you guys today. And you have Tubby and Mitch, and we are on the extra credits, extra histories content for you. And it's the First Opium Wars, and we're doing episode 1 for you guys today. I've sort of listened to, well, not listened, but I've know a fair bit about this subject already. You've heard about it, but you don't know too much about it, do you?
No, I know a lot about it.
I think he's really going to enjoy it, and I definitely think you guys are going to enjoy our reactions to this. So if you are looking forward to it, you know what to do. But before that, if you haven't already, head over to extra credits page. The link's in the description box down below, and you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But we are jumping straight into this one.
1792, Britain has just come out of a war that's cost it not only much of its national treasury, but also one of its most lucrative overseas colonies, North America. The empire needs new sources of revenue, new opportunities for trade, and there's one clear possibility: China. By the end of the 18th century, the world had become a much smaller place, with European traders traveling the globe to feed the hungry markets of the industrializing West. Wars were fought all over the planet to secure exotic goods or the raw materials needed to power new economies of the rising European empires. But China still remained aloof. Demand for Chinese goods was high. Silk, porcelain, and especially tea were coveted by buyers back in Europe. But the Chinese emperors saw all these foreign traders as a potentially destabilizing influence, and as they had done throughout Chinese history, placed strict controls on foreign trade. Specifically, they...
Which is understandable. Do you not think?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. You always mention silk, coffee, tea.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think-
they were
I know
big.
in England, I think it was Newcastle or something. It was the biggest for silk or something.
I didn't know about the silk. I knew we loved our tea. I knew we loved our
Yeah,
tea.
tea. Yeah.
But
No, the cloth trade that was big in Newcastle. I think. It was.
okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think it was Newcastle.
But again, I do think it's fair for countries to limit the foreign trade within the country, especially during those times.
limited trade to just a few ports. Traders weren't allowed to set foot in the empire except at a handful of cities designated for that purpose, and all trade had to go through a trade monopoly known as the Hong, who could tax and regulate foreign trade as they saw fit. By the middle of the 18th century, this was taken further, and all foreign trade was restricted to a single port, Canton. This drove resentment among the European traders who saw limitless opportunity for profit if they could just get their hands on it. And those Europeans trading in China were, in some ways, a self-selecting group. If you're gonna make your living transporting goods thousands of miles from your home, you probably believe in the inherent
9 months it would take for you to go to China, get your stuff, and then go back to England to sell it. That's
value
a
of
long
unrestricted
journey.
trade, which meant that these rules did not sit well with the Europeans, and piracy and smuggling began to rise. Even within the official channels of trade, merchants began to strain at these limitations. Eventually, an employee of the Honorable East India Company, the militarized trade organization responsible for British affairs in India, pushed by what he saw as abuses of corrupt officials and undue restrictions on free trade, decided that it was time to openly break the rules that the Chinese imposed.
Something us Brits have a good experience of breaking the rules.
There always seems to be someone that wants to just break the rules.
Yeah, always.
He left Canton and took his grievances upriver, literally and figuratively, wanting to be heard by someone in the Chinese hierarchy who was outside the Hong, outside the monopoly set up in Canton. And here's where divides of culture come in, because it's possible that he wasn't acting in a way that he saw as malicious or even inappropriate. In fact, he may have been acting in a way that he thought of as perfectly reasonable were he in England. But he wasn't in England, and the arrogance of this traitor just deciding that his complaints should be elevated to imperial court rather than going through the proper authorities was unbelievable to the Chinese. More than that, it put into...
Come on. Do you not think that's stupid? You're going to another country and you think you have the right to go up to their leader and tell them your problems.
Nah, yeah, I think that's just stupid.
It's stupid, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the geezer's an idiot. I would never do that. I can't fathom that I thought I would have the right. It's like me going over to America, going up to the president and just going, you should ban all guns.
Yeah.
It's like I have no right, no say. I'm not there. Like, and also, I wouldn't do it to my prime minister, let alone another country's like head of state. You know, especially back in these times where the head of states could be considered a godly, like next to God. You know?
Yeah, when people like believe that God, they were chosen by.
They were.
God
That's
as
it.
well,
Yeah. They had the lineage. Like,
Question whether these Europeans would stay in one port at all, or even obey Chinese law. And so further restrictions were put into place. Trade was clamped down on even more. But European demands for Chinese goods, especially English demands for their newfound love of black tea, continued to grow, which brings us back to 1792. By this point, the British were importing tens of millions of pounds of tea every year. Within 2 decades, import duties on tea would account for 10% of the government's entire revenue. Tea...
That's a lot. 10% of a government's revenue is a lot.
we love our tea.
was one of the major drivers of the economy. Tea was so essential to the British world that the Canton system was simply no longer acceptable. And more than that, the British were now running an enormous trade deficit with the Chinese. Millions of pounds of silver were flowing out of the British Empire and into China. On top of that, recent European struggles had cut them off from the silver mines of South America, and costly foreign wars had left the treasury dry. Even the Honorable East India Company was broke, incurring a huge debt to finance their military conquests of parts of India. The British Empire, for all of its power and its wealth, for all its global might and territory in every region of the globe, simply did not have the raw currency it needed to continue paying for its tea habit. So, the British decided that it was time to finally send an official diplomatic mission to China. No more traders, merchants, or pirates. This was going to be a real envoy from one monarch to another to talk about opening up trade. After some consideration, it was decided that the first Earl of Macartney, a seasoned colonial governor, should lead the mission. His aims were simple: end the Canton system, establish a permanent embassy, or at least get a permanent British representative in the imperial court, and, if possible, secure the grant of a small island off the coast of China where British merchants could operate under British rather than Chinese law. So they packed the hold of a ship with clocks and telescopes.
It's an interesting ask. There's a lot you want.
Yeah, it is, but it's a sensible ask.
It is at the same time. So far, it seems okay.
Yeah.
And even carriages to be presented to the Chinese emperor, and began their trip. They sailed east around the Cape of Good Hope, with only one minor detour when the trade winds pushed them all the way to Rio de Janeiro. At last, though, they arrived in China. They immediately asked to dock at a port much closer to Beijing than Canton. This was considered bad form by the Chinese, but representatives of the East India Company explained that they had expensive gifts for the emperor on board, and didn't want any of them to get ruined in a long overland journey, so the Chinese acquiesced. They and their goods were
Smart way of tricking them.
ferried up the Grand Canal to Beijing, and here they assembled their gifts and prepared for the last leg of their journey, over the Great Wall and to the Emperor's summer palace at Jahal. Here they finally met the Emperor. And trouble began immediately. Because in the presence of the Emperor, it was expected that everyone kowtow, or kneel and bow so low that their head touched the floor. And Macartney, being a seasoned British governor and gentleman, hailing from what he believed was the most powerful and civilized nation in the world with, as he saw it, the most divine monarch, and not only the right but the duty to spread the British way around the globe, refused to do so. After all, if he wasn't gonna...
We just don't give a shit.
It's stupid. You just suck up your inner pride and get on your fucking knees and
I
bow.
understand it though, I wouldn't.
I would. Just for ease. Just for ease. As long as I come away with what I want, then I'm the victor and I had to get on my knees for it. But really, I'm the one who walks away with everything that I wanted. Who's the real winner?
Yeah, it's just we got big egos, big prides.
Yeah.
We don't want to let it down.
to touch his head to the floor for King George, he certainly wasn't going to do it here. So, after some wrangling and protestations, he proposed a counter-solution. He would perform the kowtow so long as, every time it was done, a Chinese official of equal rank would kowtow to a picture of George III. This was, of course, ludicrous to the Chinese, as, after all, they were from the most powerful and civilized nation in the world, with the most divine monarch, and who was this barbarian to try to put his king on anything like the emperor's level? Seriously. But even without the kowtow issue truly resolved, with Macartney merely genuflecting in the end, as he would to King George, the meeting went forward. Macartney showed off the marvels of British science, although mostly the flashier and less practical kind, and presented them to the Emperor. And here too, signals got crossed, because the Chinese court took this as a tribute mission. After all gift-giving missions to the emperor are tribute missions. What else would it be? And yet the British thought that they were demonstrating all the reasons that China would benefit from opening up trade with them.
Again, a big... I understand where the Chinese were thinking about this. I mean, back in the day, you would only go to an emperor and give them gifts to basically say, we respect your authority, don't come into our land, and we will pay you tribute.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks a bit interesting.
So in the end, Macartney was dismissed without the emperor agreeing to a single one of the goals he set out to achieve. And the emperor sent one of the most gloriously, imperially snarky letters ever penned to King George, thanking him for his tribute, which, though neither he nor the Chinese actually wanted it, he would graciously accept out of respect for how far George had sent people just to pay him tribute. But no, China didn't need baubles or knickknacks from England, thank you. Trade would remain the way it was. So Britain was left with a massive trade deficit. The East India Company was £28 million in debt as a result of their war in India, and the royal coffers were nearly dry. They needed to find some product the Chinese wanted. And then they did. Opium.
And we'll find out what they're going to do with that opium in the next episode. I really enjoyed that reaction, and I'm glad that I've got Mitch along with me, and I think he's going to enjoy this subject. If you guys are enjoying our reactions, you know what to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we will catch you in the next video.